RWBY is a franchise that I absolutely adore, from its cool weapons to its well-written characters and the absolutely amazing fight scenes. It's no wonder why I fell in love with it when I first saw it. Funnily enough, it was the first scene of RWBY transforming her gun into a scythe that hooked me on it, and I've been hooked ever since.
So I thought, what better way to show my love and appreciation for this series than to go through its first video game outing, RWBY Grimm Eclipse. I remember I first got into RWBY in around 2016, or at least I think it was 2016. All I remember from it was watching volumes 1, 2, and 3 back to back over the span of a few days, and being excited for volume 4, which hadn't come out yet. And when it was announced in 2017 that the first ever RWBY video game would be coming to consoles, it was hard not to be excited. I actually remember a few of my friends decided to get it on day 1, and we played it together. But that was 2017, I mean that was 7 years ago. So I thought, what better thing to do than to go through this game as an adult with a newfound knowledge of game design and take a critical look at it. So how about I quit babbling and start the game up?
So we boot up the game and get the title screen with absolutely no music. Weird. And we get the option to start the game, either in single player or multiplayer. Which, strangely enough, multiplayer is the first option and single player is the second. Wonder why that is. So we start the game and pick the first mission, Boots on the Ground, and we can actually choose the difficulty. I went with hard because I've played this game before, so it should be fine. After this, we have to select a character, and to make the video more interesting and to show off each character, I decided that for every new level I played, I would choose the next character in the list and play through it with them. So with that, let's pick our first character, Ruby Rose, and start the level. So what exactly is RWBY Grimm Eclipse? Well, it's a hack and slash game where you go through levels fighting hordes of these creatures called Grimm, all while having to watch your aura, which is your health in this game. If I had to compare it to anything, think like the Werehog in Sonic Unleashed, but multiplayer, and if every Werehog had their own moveset. Speaking of, let's discuss Ruby's moveset, shall we? Ruby's good at crowd control, as she uses her scythe to deliver powerful wide-hitting attacks to hit multiple Grimm at once. Her ultimate allows her to spin her scythe around in a circle, delivering a devastating hit to any Grimm that happens to be in the range. Also, every character has a 3-hit ranged attack to keep Grimm away and even stun them on some occasions. I also happened to find an artifact, which are these chess pieces hidden throughout the levels that you have to collect, so if you see me going backwards in any of the levels, then that's why. After I beat this horde of Grimm, I got enough experience to level up and earn a skill point. Yes, you heard that right, skill points. There's a skill tree in this game, but it's pretty bare bones. Besides the skills that increase your health, defense, or let you do multiple ultimates, they all basically just increase the damage of your attacks, or let some attacks stun enemies. So for now, I just put my points into an extra ultimate because none of the other options really appeal to me. After this, we get our first piece of story, where Professor Port here tells us that they've been having issues with the security system in this forest, so he sends us to investigate what's going on. So we head further into the forest and encounter more Grimm, these ones being called Creeps, and the big ones are called Alpha Creeps. Sounds like a certain person I know. Either way, we move on and soon encounter a new type of Grimm, Beowulfs, and they are way more aggressive than the Creeps, and there were a lot of them so I had to stay on my toes. After that, I leveled up and got another skill point, and I put it into my ranged attack, which allowed me to stun enemies in a wider area on the third shot. Next, we head into this cave and find the control center has been tampered with, so we have to defend it while Professor Port fixes it. We do this by stopping Grimm attacking the control center in a wave system, and man, it is tough. So much so that I died and had to switch back to normal mode.
Now, believe it or not, the different difficulties in this game don't actually make the game harder, funnily enough. They just add more Grimm to the levels. You see, considering this game was developed with multiplayer as the main priority, they needed to make it hard enough so that you could get through it as a team, but easy enough that you could trek through it in single player. So to do so, they added these different difficulties.
So for all intents and purposes, the 4 difficulties in this game basically boil down to 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, and 4 player. Anyway, we get through that and we're done! A pretty simple level and a good introduction to this game. On to the second level now, Technical Difficulties, and our second character, Weiss Schnee. Now Weiss plays a lot like a support, with her being able to freeze enemies and her range attack being really strong, and having the ability to home in on targets, but if she needs to, she can fight the Grimm up close and personal with her glyphs. Speaking of Grimm, it's in this level where we meet a new type of Grimm, Warpatusks. They charge up a spin attack that you can dodge or counter, after which you can attack them. After this, we get to this old gear that we have to activate to extend a bridge to the other side of this chasm, but it just so happened to attract some Grimm, so we have to deal with them as they come yet again in waves. Following this, we come across yet another control center that has been sabotaged by a mysterious assailant. so we have to defend it while Port undoes the damage. And it's not too hard considering I upgraded Weiss's ranged attack, so it basically one-shots the smaller enemies so that I can focus on the bigger ones. And we're done! Not too bad, all things considered. On to the next level now, the Collapse, and this time we'll be playing as Blake Belladonna, who is actually my favourite character in the show. She controls much like a rogue class in any other game, specialising in agility and versatile combos that are fast but weak. We find out that the person messing with the control centers has something to do with Merlot Industries, and Dr. Oobleck tells us to investigate Merlot Industries building in Mountain Glen. And it isn't long until we come across a new Grimm type, an Ursa Minor.
I know a couple Minecrafters who'd like that one.
They're slow but hit hard, and they only get stunned when they send rocks out, so that's your opportunity to attack. Once we're at the last part of the stage, we're suddenly hit with another horde of Grimm, and it's here where I start noticing the repetition of this game.
Now, I would usually complain about us having to do hordes over and over again throughout the course of the game, but I'm not going to do that here. 1, we're 3 levels in, and 2, this game has already shown that it's given us enough variety to make each encounter at least feel slightly different from the last.
Like here, we're at the very end of the horde, the game throws a new type of Grimm at you, an Ursa Major. So you have to figure out how this new enemy works and avoid all his attacks, all whilst thinking that if you die, you have to do this entire horde again. So we defeat him, and then suddenly the ground starts to shake, and the Merlot Industries tower falls, causing the floor to cave in beneath us. Which leads directly into our next level, below the surface, and our next character, Yang Zhao Wang. Yang is the basic brawler of the group, focusing on close-up punches and kicks rather than ranged attacks, but to compensate for the lack of ranged attacks, she does the most damage by far on singular opponents. And on multiple, she can use an ultimate to punch the ground and cause a shockwave that damages nearby Grimm. But I probably picked the worst level to play as her, because this level requires you to escort a bomb across tracks while fueling it with dust. So 90% of my time was spent avoiding Grimm and making sure the bomb was moving rather than actually fighting. So yeah, not my smartest move. This is a big door. On to the next level now, right on track. And this time we're playing as Team Juniper and their leader, Jean Arc.
Speaking of Team Juniper, originally when this game came out, they were paid DLC. So if you didn't buy them, you were stuck with Team RWBY for the entire experience. That is unless you bought the Definitive Edition on the Nintendo Switch, where Team Juniper came free of charge, but I'll get to that later on in the video.
Jean is actually really fun to play. He's basically like Link in Hyrule Warriors, where he fights mainly using his sword, and switches out a ranged attack for this charge move. He's actually really fun. His ultimate actually gives you, and I'm assuming the entire team, a 30% damage buff, which is really cool and probably really helpful as well. Not much to say about this level though, except for the fact that it looks gorgeous, and it's the first introduction to a new Grimm, a mutant Beowulf. And it's pretty tricky to beat. 1, because it has a lot of health, and 2, because its attacks do tons of damage. But I was able to deal with it. Level 6 now, titled End of the Line, and this time we'll be playing as Nora Valkyrie, and god is she fun to play. Her attacks are slower than the rest, but to compensate she does heaps of damage. It actually got to the point where I was just spamming the aerial heavy attack, because it did a lot of damage, had multiple hits, and was a pretty fast attack. This level isn't anything too special though. It has a key mechanic which locks you off from some areas until you grab it. It also has this final section where you take on some mutant creeps and Beowulfs, but I just stood up top and shot at them. After this, we somehow find ourselves inside a shipping container and taken on a Merlot Industries boat, leading directly into the 7th level, the island of Dr. Merlot. And for this one, I chose Pira Nikos, who is the most skilled huntress of all the playable characters, and boy does the game make it feel like it. Her moveset is designed with basic attacks and combos in mind, so much so that they made an upgrade in her skill tree, an extended combo, and her ultimate is by far the best one in the game. She uses her polarity to orbit her spear around her, dealing tons of damage. Overall, a really fun character to play. This level introduces us to these androids, a new type of enemy that isn't Grimm. They suck. Not only do they have a wide-hitting and fast-starting attack, but they hit like a truck, and sure you can stun them, but the game loves to spawn them in pairs, so as soon as you do stun one of them, the other one can just waltz up and attack you. And also, if you do manage to stun one of them, it only lasts about 2 seconds, so you're able to get about 3 or 4 hits in before they recover and attack you back. Luckily they don't have much health, so they're pretty easy to take down, but in later levels they're really annoying to deal with. This level also introduces us to the main villain of the game, Dr. Merlot, and he states that he's been trying to make the world a better place, but I've seen enough movies to know that he means a better place for him and not us. On to the next level now, a Grimm Discovery, and our last character, Ren. Ren isn't the best. He's not too good at dealing damage up close, but if you hang back and use your ranged attack, it's also not too good either. The only good move he has to me anyway is his ultimate that lets him teleport from enemy to enemy, doing decent damage to each one. It actually got to the point where at the end of this level I had to switch to another character. He's that underwhelming. Speaking of this level, it's not the best. We have to deal with these red androids again, and when you're playing as a level 1 Ren, it is hell. Especially since they don't stay stunned for long, and they love to perform this pincer maneuver on you, which makes them annoying to deal with. We also get introduced to these white androids, which are nowhere near as annoying to deal with as the red ones. They shoot multiple projectiles at you that you need to avoid. And that is it. Yep, that's their entire moveset. This level ends with more waves of enemies, but this time the androids are integrated into it too, and it was annoying. So much so that I need to switch to Weiss after dying a few times. Other than that, this level was actually quite boring. It has a PNG moon. On to the penultimate level now, the Grand Tour, and since we don't have any more characters to go through, I'll just choose Blake since she's my favourite. And this level is fine. Not anything too difficult really, just the same stuff we've been doing. Oh, and from this point forward, besides one thing we'll get to later, there are no new enemies in this game at all. So it's in these two levels where I start really noticing the monotony of this game.
But to give this game some credit, it's only here, in the second to last level, where I felt it get quote-unquote boring. The other levels introduce new enemies and mechanics to make it at least feel varied. So to me, calling the game repetitive is stupid and misinterpreting the game entirely.
So yeah, this level's boring and monotonous, but it's the second to last level, so it must all be a lead up to the grand finale. Speaking of, here we are at the final level of the game, amply titled Final Exam. And it is more of the same as before, just this time with the spikes shooting out of the floor. Again, adding new things to the game, even in the final level. All of you saying that this game is repetitive have no idea what you're talking about, I swear. This all leads to our final hordes of Grimm coming in waves. And it's nothing we haven't dealt with before, so it's fairly simple. So we get through that, and Dr. Merlot gets desperate and sends out his greatest creation, a mutant Deathstalker.
And this boss, I mean, oh my god, this boss is just so fucking awful!
Where to begin with this one? To start with, he has 5 separate attacks. He can either slam the ground, causing a shockwave around him, he can slash at you with his claws, causing huge damage, he can burrow into the ground and move around the arena and then burst out, so if you're not careful you can get hit there. He can stab his tail into the ground, immobilizing him for a moment so you can deal damage. And he can spin around to shoot these poison spikes in varying patterns.
Sounds annoying, right? Well, that's just the first 25% of the fight.
Once a quarter of his health is gone, he spawns 4 creeps and 1 white android that you have to deal with. So you kill the Grimm and they're gone, and then you kill the android and it respawns.
It respawns. Why? I'm already busy dealing with the boss itself, and now you want me to focus on an android that doesn't stop attacking me.
Let me calm down. At least it's not a red android.
Bet you can't tell what happens once half its health is gone.
You guessed correctly. Once this boss has lost half of his health, he starts spawning 4 mutant creeps and 1 constantly respawning red android. Your reward for guessing correctly is my will to live. Psych, I don't have one anymore.
Listen, I don't mind a final boss spawning generic enemies to attack you in its second or third phase. What I do have a problem with is making those enemies constantly respawn, so they're always a thorn in your side when all you want to do is fight the boss.
It makes me focus less on the final boss, you know, the last fucking thing in the game, and focus more on these enemies that I've dealt with throughout the entirety of my experience. It makes the boss fight less of a spectacle and more of a chore. And again, it's not hard to fix, just make it so that when I kill the enemies, androids included, that they're gone until the next phase. Anyway, where were we? Okay, so when you get into 25% health, he spawns 4 alpha creeps, and no androids, thank god. And they're easy to get rid of, and sometimes the Deathstalker can use his burrow move and kill them for you, so that's nice.
This boss was so goddamn hard. And funnily enough, all that information I just told you in that rambling speech, I got from the wiki. I didn't know any of that going into this. I was well and truly blind.
I had to switch to Weiss just so I could abuse her really strong ranged attack so I could focus on the boss itself and just ignore the other enemies. This led to 20 minutes of me running around the arena spamming the ranged attack and watching the other enemies chasing me. After that I was done, and it's here where Dr. Merlot decides to self-destruct the entire building, which we luckily escaped from. Credits roll.
And that's RWBY Grimm Eclipse. When it comes to RWBY games, it's fine. You know, not the best, not the worst. It's a solid first entry into a series' first venture into video games. Overall, it's like a 6 out of 10. But just quickly, I'd like to go through a few of my final thoughts when it comes to this game, starting with the music. Now, when it comes to the music of this game, you can't exactly call it original. It mostly reuses songs from volumes 1 through 3, and that's not a bad thing. I like the songs that are in this game, because the music in RWBY is always great. What I have a problem is, though, them not making any original music for their first ever video game. Secondly, when it comes to the gameplay, I didn't find it nearly as repetitive as other people found it. I found it a fun time, but the one thing I did find repetitive about it were the characters' movesets. Specifically their ultimates. Almost every single one is an AoE attack. I think the only one not being an AoE is, funnily enough, Ren's. Also, the level design as a whole is a bit bland in some places. And I don't know whether that's due to the fact that they didn't have much time to work on this game, or if there was something else. I think a game like this could have worked really well with a more open-ended level design structure. And while I'm talking about this, why not go on to what I think would make the perfect RWBY game, in my opinion.
First of all, make it open world. RWBY already has an expansive world with kingdoms and different towns and settlements all over the world of Remnant, so why not capitalize on that? Imagine a RWBY game where you can create your own character, give them a weapon and semblance, and choose to star in any of the 4 kingdoms in the show. And the story could either be non-tangential to the main story, or could tie into it with certain references to, say, the fall of Beacon or the battle for Haven. Or hell, they could even pull a Xenoverse and let us go through the main events of the story as if we were part of it. Essentially, think Breath of the Wild mixed with Persona 5 with the day-to-day school element.
But seeing as the future of the RWBY series is still up in the air, I doubt we'll get the announcement of a new game anytime soon. Lastly, I alluded to it earlier, but I'd like to take a few more minutes just to talk about the definitive edition of this game. Firstly, it's a Switch exclusive for some reason, which means all the cool stuff that was added, i.e. the Horde mode and the Volume 7 outfits, they're stranded on that console, which kinda sucks. I get it, you need a way to sell the game, but if you're gonna make a Switch version with the new things, why not make a PS5 or Xbox Series version? It doesn't make any sense. And that really sucks, because I really like the Volume 7 outfits, so to see them stranded on the Nintendo Switch is really annoying. I mean, how hard would it have been to make a DLC for the other consoles where you got these costumes? Other than that, I can't say too much about the definitive edition, mostly because I haven't played it, so I don't know too much about what it changed or what's new in it. All in all, I like this game, but I can see its very obvious flaws. For a first go-around in the video game world, it's a solid time, and if you're a RWBY fan, I implore you to play this game. And now that that's done, I'm gonna go sleep for a month, because I've been working way too damn hard in these first 5 videos. So I will see you in August when we look at Sonic CD. Oh, fuck.